Welcome to our service from Monton Unitarian Church for Sunday, the 18th of April. This is our annual general meeting Sunday. And so we ask ourselves a question about just why do we do church? Let's begin, as always, by lighting our chalice candle. And a wonderful call to action by David Blanchard. Come down off the ladder. Wash out that paintbrush. Shake the sand out of your shoes. Get up off your muddy knees and give the garden a morning off. Fold up the newspaper. Turn off the coffee pot. Close up your calendar already filled with dates and times and people and places that claim you. This church is ready for you to fill its rooms, to create its spirit, to generate its warmth, to kindle its light. This church is ready for you to make community, to create beauty, to bend it towards justice, to serve its ideals. This church is ready for you to be here, honouring our past, invigorating our present, and dreaming our future. This is your church. Here we are home. Here we are whole. Let us begin. And let's join together in a time of prayer with some glorious words by Victoria Weinstein. Spirit of life and love, may we recognise that this church is a body. May this body breathe and be together in the spirit of hope. May it feel held by comfort. Those who seek consolation, may they find it in the solace of this moment. May we recognise that this church is a body. It is as strong as all the men and women who have ever gathered within its walls. It is the power of all they dreamed and all that they have ever done. May we recognise that this church is a body. It is as vulnerable as the most newborn and untried of its members. It is ancient, and it is ever new. May we recognise that this church is a story. It is the story of lives that are interwoven, brought together in this place and this time for the simple purpose of caring for one another and helping one another along the path from birth to death. May we recognise that this church is a vision. It is a vision of unity amid diversity. It is a vision of reverence for all of creation. It is a vision that beckons us beyond the concerns of our own skins. May we abide as one body in the spirit of faith, hope, and love that is the story and the vision of this church. Amen. After this service, when it's held in the church, we will be having our annual general meeting. When we think about who we are, what we've achieved in the past year, and what we want to be and do in the future. This reading by Martha Dallas wonders a bit about that question of just what a church should be. Have you ever wondered how it came to be that churches are known as places where you can get a helping hand if you need one? It seems to me that a key source of the charitable nature of churches goes all the way back to the time of Jesus. You see, in the society in which Jesus lived, in his time and place, things were very unfair and unjust. At that time, there were a few people at the top who were rich and powerful, and there were a bunch of people at the bottom, and these were people who were thirsty, hungry, and poor. They were homeless and sick and disabled. And in that society, the people at the bottom were considered to be untouchable. It was thought that people who needed these kinds of help were so much at the bottom that if you even touched one of them, you risked becoming untouchable yourself. There were even rules and codes to follow to make sure that the classes of society remained safely separated from each other. You know what Jesus thought about this? He absolutely believed it was wrong. And he rejected this unfair society with people on the bottom who were considered untouchable. He preached against it. And what's more, he acted against it. He deliberately hung out with the untouchable people. And what's more, he touched them. In fact, there are stories of Jesus' healing touch, touching all those people at the bottom whom society told him not to touch. Jesus showed these people mercy, compassion, love. And the stories of his healing touch have come down through the centuries to us. Well, the Gospels that speak about Jesus and the early church that emerged took this part of Jesus' message to heart. The church believed that if someone is thirsty, you should give them something to drink. If you find someone who's hungry, you offer them food. If you see someone who's poor, you give them some money so they can buy what they need. For people who are homeless, offer them shelter. With those who are sick, help them get medicine and treatment for their illness. And for people with disabilities, offer them a helping hand and make some adjustments so they play a full part in the world. Following Jesus' example, this is what the church has worked to do. Because when you see someone who has a need for help, and then you decide to offer them the kind of help that they need, well, that's God, right there. And when you offer a helping hand to someone who needs it, you allow a little bit of heaven to shine, right here on earth. And that's what we're trying to do today. A second reading now by Sean Neil Barron, who takes a slightly different look at a history of church, including yours and ours. One day, your church was born. Maybe it was a gathering of saints, called together for the common worship of a wrathful God, ceaselessly praying between bouts of decrying the evil of Christmas or dancing. Or maybe a few brave souls answered a notice in the newspaper. Curiosity piqued by the announcement of a religion where free thinking and tolerance were bedrocks. No matter how it happened, your church was born. A gathering of people, humble, caring, anxious, quirky, all at the same time, who covenanted to be with one another on the journey of life, death, and everything in between. And so it began. A faithful few, beautifully imperfect, called to that central task, that human task of connecting, loving, and serving. It was just a baby, your church, and yet it was thrust deep into the human condition, tasked to hold minds and souls, bodies and hearts along the roller coaster of disease and birth, infighting and joy and Christmas pageants, sometimes all of those at the same time. They gathered to hear the world broken open, for insightful sermons, rejuvenating music, and a community whose fierce devotion to each other's well-being rivaled a mama bear's for her cubs. But it wasn't always like that, of course. There were the trying times. And I don't just mean Phyllis or Jack, those stubborn but lovable souls who inhabit the netherworld of committee meetings. No, I mean the trying times. When the church almost split in half over the war or politics, or when the mill left the town vacant, or when the minister crossed that line and the people couldn't speak about it for decades. But somehow you were still here, still on the town common, still the church that everyone recognises, still the ones that showed up every time you were called on, still using the communion silver until you voted to sell it. New people came, and they changed things. Small things, big things. Things that nobody noticed as it happened until suddenly it was hard to even recognise anything anymore. That was a hard moment, a tearful moment. And other things changed too. The proclamations about God, once heard loud from the pulpit, softened. Wrathful became loving. Distant became intimate. Mandatory became optional. After the war, the nursery and RE classrooms were overflowing. Each baby dedicated reminded the church of the incredible beauty of life and the gift this community, all huddled around baby, would bestow upon this child. The history of your church is more a story of the determination of love to break forth than it is about arguments about tie-dye or chalices or sermon discussions or social justice committee meetings. The history of the church is the history of human enterprise, evolving in its sights and sounds, yet revolving always around its core. The history of your church is the gift of potential and momentum, of baggage and personality. The history of your church is the launch pad from which you spring into action or disarray. Each day, your church is born. let's join together again in a time of prayer. This prayer is written by Richard Trudeau, and I use it every AGM Sunday. Spirit of life and love, help us make this church a refuge from the world, a place where the rules are different. May this be a place where no experience is necessary, where people are encouraged to risk new things, where a university administrator can try her hand at plumbing if she wants, or a plumber can help manage the finances, or a banker can teach 5-year-olds. May this be a place where people always feel that their efforts have been worthwhile and their energy well spent. And may this be a place where, as in a children's football league, everyone gets to play. Help us make this church a refuge from the world, a place where the rules are different. May no one feel invisible here, or feel worried about what others might be thinking of them. May no one be bored here. If a person isn't interested in what the minister is talking about today, may they be excited by the music or a conversation at coffee hour. May this be a place where people are touched. If not by something said, then perhaps by something sung, or by the light coming through the windows, or by the sense that the people who come here truly support one another. May this be a place where everyone feels safe. Safe to follow their thoughts wherever they lead. Safe to believe whatever they must. And safe to share whatever is on their minds and whatever is in their hearts. Help us make this church a refuge from the world, a place where the rules are different, a place where our wells can fill up again, where we can be refreshed and renewed, so that when we return to the world with our batteries recharged, we can help transform the world into a place where the rules are different. Amen. The congregation at Monton Unitarian Church in Salford has been around for a long time. From its beginnings in the second half of the 17th century, people have gathered here, whether in open fields or in one of the 4 church buildings that have stood here, to worship, to give thanks, to celebrate and to mourn, and to move forward in hope. Throughout the years since that first meeting, all the things that happen now will have been happening over and over. Newcomers arriving, old-timers dying, others leaving because we no longer feel right for them. There'll have been numerous debates in numerous committees about money, about policy, about personalities. There will have been plenty of arguments, of that we can be sure. Because that's what living in community involves. Continuous adjustment, change, debate, fallings out and reconciliations. Some things never change, and the need for change is one of them. We are feeling that now, as we prepare to reopen the buildings after a year of pandemic and feel our way forward into an uncertain but potentially very exciting future. And all of these things bring problems. But problems are not new to this congregation. They've always been dealing with something or other. Although I must confess, I always like the idea of having to deal with a problem one committee of ours heard about over 100 years ago now, where the minister complained that a recruitment drive was needed because we were almost down to just 300 members. Oh, to have that as a problem. Change can be difficult. We know that. People who have done particular jobs for long periods of time need to relinquish them to others, and that can be hard. Other people need to be persuaded to take jobs on, and that can be equally hard, as we all have such busy lives. And customs build up over time that can be painful to let go of. We all know the phrase, "But we've always done it that way." It has its value. Tradition carries weight, but it can also weigh communities down and become a millstone around our necks rather than an anchor in time of storm. We need always to be willing to look dispassionately at who we are and what we do, and ask ourselves why. And if there aren't better ways, different ways, ways that maybe nurture our people better or make us more effective, both at how we operate internally and in what we can offer to the community around us. At the heart of all of this is the question of why we exist, why we work so hard to continue moving forward. Put simply, why church? Some of it will be because of our personal needs. We need this community for our own support. We love the fellowship and friendship, the social gatherings, the time out each week where we can have safe space. And that's vital. We do exist to nurture our members, to offer a place for discovery and resting and growth and peace. And it's so important to have a place, particularly in this difficult, hurting world. To have a safe space where we are welcomed and celebrated for who and what we are, and where we can find comfort and encouragement. But if that is all we do, then we have missed the other half of our purpose. We are here to serve our local community, to work for justice for those in our area who are suffering from discrimination or from poverty, who are ill or distressed or lonely, who need us to walk alongside them and reassure them. We are here to serve our wider community, the global community, to stand up against injustice and prejudice and hatred, to campaign for change via our politicians and our governments. We are here to demonstrate what true, beloved community can look like, to hold that torch high and encourage others to do likewise. which all sounds very highfalutin and grandiose. It isn't really. At rock bottom, we are here to love. To love each other as friends and to love each other as strangers. And because we live in the 21st century, we need to be businesslike about some of it. Hence all the stuff that some will hear later about charity commissions and charitable incorporated organisations and chairpeople and treasurers and secretaries. But we need that organisation to give us our best shot at being a loving community that also has responsibility for buildings and finances. But most of all, we need you. We need us. Because a community doesn't exist at all without the people who covenant to it. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. Thank you for every small thing, or big thing, ain't turning big things down. Everything that you bring to help us move forward together. Looking from our past, through our present, and into our future. I'm going to close by reading to you a church history service reflection by Priscilla Murdoch. On this both joyous and solemn day, we have reason to celebrate. We have reason to be grateful. We have reason to be proud. We gather in the shadow of a world unsure of itself, of plans for peace lost in the plague of ambition, of a planet under threat. And yet we have cause to be hopeful. Our forebears have given us an example of perseverance in the face of uncertainties, of hope in the face of difficulties. This church was gathered that they might have a place to come to be together, to share their hopes and their faith. It is today the church that they envisioned, but with a wider vision and perhaps a wider, if not stronger, hope. The problems of the days of our founders were hazardous, but not overwhelming to a determined people. The problems we are called upon to deal with in these times are indeed difficult, but not beyond our capacities to deal with. Our hope lies not only in the inner strength that our religion teaches us to nurture, but also in the example of those who went before to show us the way. They built a church for us, and it is ours to hand on to our children and to their children. May the light of reason, the comfort of kindness, the depth of a growing spiritual life, the outreach of action, and the acceptance of our own goodness and potential always be our inspiration and the source of our continuing gratitude to our founders and to those who have carried the torch that we now hold high. Thank you for being you. Thank you for being here. Simply, thank you. And so our benediction. In the words of Michael Schuler, I ask you, if you are proud of this church, become its advocate. If you are concerned for its future, share its message. If its values resonate deep within you, give it a measure of your devotion. This church and this world cannot survive without your faith, your confidence, your enthusiasm. Its destiny and the larger hope lies within your hands. Our worship is over. Go in peace. Amen. Thank you so much for joining me again this week. For those of you who are near enough, Monton Unitarian Church is now open on Sunday mornings 10:45 if you wish to join us. But these videos will continue being produced for all of you who are not either willing or able to join us on Sunday mornings. Whether you are there in church with us or here online with us, stay safe, stay strong, and know that you are loved.